Hey, thanks for coming back. I appreciate you coming to the show again. On the screen with me is Inder Singh. He is the founder and CEO of Kinsa Health. I am bringing you this gentleman, this company, because I got to tell you, I have been completely and utterly enamored by the app that they have. I've been watching this app since I first. The only reason I would even have it is because of what's going on with COVID. So of course, once COVID hit, is like, wait a second, what are all the apps I should be looking at? And this is definitely one of them. This is one that I check, if not every day, every few days, because I just think it's fascinating. And lots of times I have no idea what the heck's going on with it, but it's just super cool. So for the listeners, you can go to, what is it, healthweather.us. Healthweather.us is what we're going to be talking about. So, Inder, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate you talking to us. This is your baby. You founded this thing back in 2012. Tell us a little overview just so people understand what is, first of all, there's Kinsa, and that's at kinsahealth.co, I think, right? Is that right?
.com, .co, both work.
Okay, good. So you have Kinsa Health, which is your company, and then you also set up a website is healthweather.us so that we as the public can kind of see what's going on. So just explain, Kinsa, what you're doing. Give the listeners a little overview.
Yes, I started the company in 2012 with a mission, and our mission is to curb the spread of infectious illness through earlier detection and earlier response. Said another way, our job is to detect and predict and respond to outbreaks. One of the challenges that you have with outbreaks, as we all well know today, is we don't have the ability to detect them early. By the time we detect them, it's too late and it's spread. And we have early detection systems for many other things in the world, for earthquakes and for tsunamis and for asteroids, as we should. But we don't have an effective early detection system for outbreaks. So 8 years ago, we set out to do that. The approach we took was pretty straightforward. None of the stuff that we're doing is really rocket science. When you pull it all together, it kind of seems like it, but it's not. If you want to know where and when outbreaks are starting, you got to know where and when symptoms are starting. If you want to know how fast they're spreading, you want to know how many people are being affected after that first person is affected in the home, the school, and the workplace. Those are places that diseases spread. And you want to know how bad it's getting. How bad are the symptoms? How long lasting it is, right? So that's, where is it starting? Where and when is it starting? How fast is it spreading? And how bad is it going to get? And so to do that, what we did was we said, well, gosh, we got to talk to people within hours of symptom onset. We got to ask them questions. What's the best way to do that? So we reimagined the age-old thermometer. We turned the thermometer from a temperature sensing device into a smart device. I know people are probably tired of the word smart, but this is really a product that's very different than a thermometer. Think of it as like a connected medical guidance system. Based on your temperature, your fever, and we ask you for your age, because most medical guidance is age-based. We provide you with what you should do. When do you see the doctor? Is it appropriate to go to the emergency room? Like, what do I do now? Before you ever enter the healthcare system. And what we do with the entire network of today, 1.5 million smart thermometers, 4.5 million people using them, is we aggregate data. We look at where and when fever is spreading. How fast is it spreading? And that's how we're able to identify clusters of fever across the country.
Good. That's good. That's a good start. And originally, now let's think about this. Of course, COVID started, just late last year. You guys started in 2012. I read 2014, the FDA gave you the okay with these thermometers. Can you bring up an image of a thermometer? Can we take a look at it so people know what we're talking about? I bought one of these, just so everybody knows, for my son. There it is. Look at that. The one in your right hand looks super cool to me. The one is in the left. Is that just the kind you hit with the forehead type thing?
This is
or the ear.
The ear. This is the ear thermometer, and then this is the age-old stick, but modernized in a big way.
Right. Good. I bought one of those for my son. I said, dude, once I told him about it, he's like, yeah, I want one of those. So it's very cool. He's 22, so he wanted one of those. And by the way, now that we're holding up products, Kinsa has not paid me anything to have them on. This is, and also, if we talk about any kind of medical advice out there, I want everybody to know there is no medical advice being dispensed here. So it's important to know that. I had Tracy, our producer, reach out to see if we could talk to Inder because I'm just enamored by this company. So, all right. So you got the thermometers. You guys put them out in the field. Right now, you got 1.5 million. From what I've read, you've been tracking really influenza for a number of years.
Right.
The flu. When's the flu season starting? What's going on? Before we get into COVID, tell us about the data that you collected and what you could predict with that.
Yeah, so we aggregated the data, and our hypothesis that we could actually detect flu spread and predict it, that's key, predict it, is true. Today, we can predict flu spread, the spread of influenza-like illness, 12 to 20 weeks out on a city-by-city basis. Now, let's compare
12 to 20 weeks? So we're talking 5 months?
on
Almost?
September 15th, we can predict the entire rest of the flu season with great accuracy. When is the peak going to occur? To what intensity level? And we can predict it on every city that we've looked at this.
Wow.
We can predict it that far out. Now, let's compare that. Let's compare that to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and their best academic partner, Carnegie Mellon. Carnegie Mellon has won the flu forecasting competition from CDC for 5 straight years. The data that we see from them over the last several years can predict it 3 weeks out on a multi-state or state level. And I want to be clear, we are not smarter than CDC or Carnegie Mellon. We are not. We have better data.
Yeah.
The existing system looks at data from healthcare visits when you see the doctor. But we all know today, come on, we all know it really like personally. By the time you see the doctor, it's too late. The illness is spread, right? Because in COVID, person 1 gets sick in the household and maybe gets a fever for a day or 2, but then it's fleeting. It goes away. You never enter the healthcare system. You're not sick enough to go see the doctor. You spread it to person 2, who maybe doesn't get symptoms at all. Then they spread it to person 3 in the household. And according to CDC, a few days later, they get symptoms. And 5 to 8 days later, they enter the healthcare system. The latest data I saw is that 5 to 8 days after first symptoms is when they really go into the healthcare system, get tested.
Right.
Those delays in the context of COVID are massive. We're talking about weeks. We get to see mildly symptomatic spread. The healthcare system doesn't. And that's the fundamental difference, is we're talking to people from those early days.
So what you're getting from them is they pop that thermometer in their mouth. They take their temperature. When they receive the thermometer and ideally set it up, it's linked to the internet. It comes over to your guys' database. You can now see the actual real-time live temperature reading of that human. And I understand, having read, you're going to assure us there's no privacy. You don't know who that person is, but you just know that there's someone at that location that has the temperature. So talk to us about that little interaction there.
Yeah. So imagine your child is sick. They come into your room in the middle of the night. This is common with sick kids, right? And they say,
Sure.
I'm feeling well. So what do? You comfort them, you talk to them. And what's the only thing you can really do in the home to confirm illness? Grab the thermometer.
Yeah.
And so in this case, you grab our thermometer. You take their temperature, and we don't like interrupting the temperature taking process. You do it independent of having your phone on, independent of having the app on. As long as you've opted in before, a minute or 2 later, we send you a push notification on your phone saying, hey, looks like someone took a temperature. Who was it? Okay, it was this person. It was Johnny. Well, now let's ask you a series of questions. Johnny's 5, so we're going to ask you this set of questions, right? These are the questions that we're going to ask for a 5-year-old. It's like calling a nurse hotline. It's just a nurse hotline on steroids in a multimedia fashion, right? So you say, hey, no severe symptoms. We say, great. Do you have any symptoms at all? You have a cough. 80% of our users ask or respond to a series of 3 to 5 questions to characterize their cough, to get more guidance. Every tap, you get a little bit more guidance on what you should do. If you got your thermometer through your child's school, we can actually tell you whether the level of illness at the school is high or low, right? The first question in a parent's mind is, heck, what's going around? Is it strep or is it common cold? Because if I know it's strep, I'm going to the doctor right now. And we all know all illnesses start the same way. Fever, body aches, cough, like they all start with very similar ways. But what you don't know is what's going to happen. If you have a little bit of information about what's going around, you see that, well, there's a lot of colds going around, but there's also some strep. Well, you may actually hold them back and go see the doctor faster than you would pop them with Tylenol and send them off to school, right? Which is, you're not supposed to do that, but that's very common, as we know, for parents.
Oh yeah, parents got to go to work.
Yes, exactly. And so it provides that very bit of guidance, very, very important context of guidance to say, okay, I have a little bit more information, now I know what to do. And it even gives you guidance like, for example, would you like us to remind you to take a fever in 4 hours after you gave them, you know, acetaminophen or ibuprofen? And if the fever hasn't gone down, well, that's more concerning. Now you do need to speak to a doctor, or now you do need to go to the emergency room. So all of those kind of things are highlighted in the app. Stuff that parents kind of know, but not always.
It feels, I got to tell you, from a business standpoint, liability just comes into my mind. So you're sitting there telling a parent kind of when to go to the hospital or not. How, yeah, anyway, I'm sure you figured it out, but that makes me nervous for you.
Yeah, I mean, all of this is what they would call widely accepted medical guidance. This is coming
Okay.
straight out of the medical literature, straight out of the nurse hotline protocols, straight out of that. We just make it fun, visual,
Yeah.
easy to access, tap of a button, synthesized. And so,
So it's got to be pretty comforting, I would think, if you are a parent in the middle of the night and you do have that and you can punch in and just get what the general guidelines are. You get good feedback from parents about this.
yeah, our intention is to do exactly that: is to comfort them, is to give them a little bit of guidance in the moment of need. To give them, they might know some of this, but they're still probably calling into question some of it, right? And so, just to give them
Sure.
reassurance, this is the right thing to do. This is what the medical guidance literature says, and we get great reviews. The stick thermometer I held up earlier is a smart version, but it's one of the two best selling thermometers of any kind, connected or
Hmm.
otherwise, on Amazon, one of the two highest rated. And we get really, really high scores and ratings. Like, we're answering the questions that you really care about in the moment. Like, listen, no one really cares, is it 103 or 103.5? What they care about is,
Yeah.
how sick am I? What do I do? And what's going around? And those are the three
Yeah.
questions we answer.
Yeah. Good. So then, is it connected at all to if they needed to connect with a teledoc? Do you guys have that system? It seems like from again a business. I'm an entrepreneur too, so you'd want to connect with that to make sure they have a seamless line to get some help.
Yeah, we do have that, and usually, like, if you get it through your employer, it's connected into your employer's telemedicine provider, so that, it's free and it's not, you're not paying additional. You're all seamlessly connected into your
Yeah.
own benefits, and so we do have those kinds of connection points. Absolutely.
Man, I can only imagine what this is like for COVID. I mean, this is perfect timing. All right, so let's before we get to that. So you have 1.5 million thermometers out there. You mentioned something around 4 million people use it because you have family members using it.
Correct.
And this is spread pretty much across the country pretty evenly, so you can actually get a feel of what's going on in the country.
Yeah, we have it all in every major, geography in the country, rural, and every county has some thermometers in it. There's different levels of penetration depending on, the area. Like New York City, we have lots and lots of people using it, and so, we definitely have it across the country. It's really, we get about 150 to 250,000 temperature readings per day, just to put this in
Wow.
perspective, and that's how we can hotspot across the country.
All right, so let's get to the meat and bones of this deal because what's happened is you guys, from what I've read, have been following influenza, understand what really should be going on during certain times of year with temperature, and then along came COVID. And then you started seeing some other stuff. So talk to us about the knowledge you have leading into you first starting to see COVID hit the U.S.
So in early March, we turned our data upside down and we said, how do we detect COVID specifically? So what we did was we launched healthweather.us. And what you see on healthweather.us is fever levels across the country. Specifically, what you see is unusual fever levels that go above and beyond what you'd normally expect for cold and flu season.
Let's take a look at it. Can you bring it up?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, this particular graph, let me try to pop up. These are the current fever levels across the country. You notice that there's not that many people, that many places that have significant fever levels above what you'd ordinarily expect for cold and flu season. Now, there are
So,
places.
yeah, and over to the left is your scale. So, the color coding, and this is what you're calling atypical.
This is atypical fever, and then we also have atypical transmission levels.
Now,
And
this is new. This is new. You guys just came up with this and I have no idea how you're figuring that out because now what you're talking about is higher transmission versus lower transmission. And what do you call that? What is that? A RT rating of above one or below one? I'm not sure what that is officially called.
yeah, it's the reproductive rate. You've probably heard of
Okay.
it on television a little bit. It's the
Yeah.
reproductive rate, and if it's above one, that means illness is spreading. If it's below one, it means it's not spreading anymore. Um,
Okay.
And so what we're seeing with respect to how fast fever is increasing and how slow fever is increasing, right now we're basically in a place where cold and flu is zero, right? It's really in the summer, COVID is spreading. And so we look at atypical transmission in the summer because that's a better indicator of from zero, what's happening and what's spreading. Now, in the fall, you're going to need both measures. In the fall, you're going to need to sort of look at cold and flu average levels and also transmission levels to get a better sense for where there's an unusual outbreak. So let's take a step back, right? What is this intended to do? Wherever you see fever, that's an outbreak. Now the question, that's like a beacon going off on the map.
Because right now we don't have cold and we don't have the flu season. So if you're seeing fever, we suspect or expect it's COVID.
That's right. Okay. Now in the fall, you're going to have a mix of COVID and cold and flu. So again, wherever you see fever, there's an outbreak. But now what we need to do is say, how do we make that signal more powerful? How do we look for unusual outbreaks that are not traditionally associated with cold and flu? And so we're doing two things. One, we're looking for the intensity of fevers to be higher than we normally expect. And the reason we can do that is because over the last 6 years, we fingerprinted the country to understand how fever spreads with cold and flu. So we're subtracting out that fingerprint. Another thing we can do is look at the speed of spread. Flu tends to spread at certain speeds during different times of the year. We have
you already know that. You've already tested that. You got the data on that. Okay.
And that's how we predict it 12 to 20 weeks out. So now what we're doing is we're subtracting out the speed of its spread from the speed that we're observing. And anything that's above the speed of spread is atypical. It's unusual. And that is, again, another flashlight, a more powerful flashlight going off on the map saying, hey, it's not just an outbreak, it's an unusual outbreak. Go send the test kits in, go send the virologists in, go send the PPE in. That's a place you need to investigate.
Okay, good. I get that. Now, because we have this on screen, explain what we're seeing.
So we're seeing today, what we're seeing is that.
And this is today. This is numbers right now. This is live.
This is live. This is today.
All right.
Texas is fortunately starting to see transmission levels below 1. So that means that 3 weeks from now, we should start to see the COVID cases curve off. 3 weeks from now, we should.
3 weeks. So that's our lead time here.
It's 2 to 4 weeks, depending on a variety of different factors. But think of it as like 18 to 21 days. That's really okay. Most places. So 3 weeks from now, we should start to see the COVID cases. That means that actions that are being taken today are starting to decrease the spread of disease. Now, in June 9th, we saw Texas light up. And it was lighting up in the opposite way. We were seeing
I bet we can go back. This is on a timeline, right? Let's pop it back so people can see what it looked like a bit ago.
So you can see Texas is lighting up. That's June 29th. Boy,
there
June 19th really lit up. And it started on June 9th. We started to see the light ups here, right on June 9th.
Okay.
Now we go
June 9th, then we go to the next, what is that? What are we, a week or 10-day stints here?
This is June 19th on the map here.
Okay, good.
See that it's very, very lit up all over Texas.
And so that's 19th. And so how many, what are we, a month? That's a month ago.
And we're still seeing COVID. And now let's go to the next one. The next increment is June 29th. We're still seeing spread in Texas. Yep. So between June 9th, we started seeing spread. June 19th, it got really bad. And June 29th, it continued to spread. And you can see that there's other hotspots across the country in different locations on the 29th.
Okay, so keep going forward. Click it. Give us another 10-day. Just let's walk through. Okay, but there it is. What's that date?
July 9th, and you can still see some spread, mostly in eastern Texas. But fortunately, it was about 1. And then we're now seeing on July 19th that it dramatically decreased. And today we're continuing to see it decreased.
And I wonder, since these are live, if there was actions taken in Texas 10, 12 days ago. It sounds like when you had that other piece up there that started this going down. I mean, I don't know if you know that. I don't know that. I haven't been following Texas that closely.
Yeah, I think whether it is mandates by the governor or the mayors, or whether it's individuals taking action, like staying indoors or washing hands or doing more mask wearing. We know that there's now more of a mask mandate in Texas, for example.
Right.
Um,
Interesting.
so this is what we're seeing, but this is what we're happening today. So it's a little
Right.
hard to understand, but because you're saying 3 weeks out what's going to happen, but that's where
Right.
this is a leading indicator of spread.
So even though someone's seeing in Texas today, it's really still high, they can come to this in their area and go, oh, this is the leading indicator, a leading indicator that would tell us in a couple weeks or so, we should start seeing something pull back if it's blue. Now, if it's not blue, like we saw in Texas, it's going to ramp up.
That's right.
You guys are, I mean, you've seen this enough to know that your algorithm works. You guys see that this is accurate.
Yeah, that's right. So we have partnered with a number of public health and scientists. They've done independent analysis. We've done independent analysis. There's links on healthweather.us that you can go to look at the actual science and analysis. And there's publications out there. It's a powerful leading indicator. Now, to be clear, again, we don't have thermometers. We have thermometers everywhere, but we don't have enough thermometers to necessarily say this zip code is where the outbreak is. In Southern Florida, it's really like a multi-county area. In New York, it's by borough, right? In California, we're starting to have really good sensor distribution in certain places. And so what we really want to do is increase the number of thermometers across the United States so we can hotspot, right? The whole idea here is, my friends in the Navy like to say, what is the first thing you do when a fire breaks out on the boat? The first thing you do is contain it. So you can let normal life continue on in the rest of the boat, and then you fight it. That's the same thing with an outbreak. The first thing we can do, if we see something light up, let's go contain it. Life as normal can continue on in the surrounding uninfected areas, and we can fight it. We can send the test kits in. We can send the virologists in. That's the power of an early warning system.
Right. If we had, so that would need to be more thermometers. You would have to have more depth to be able to go down to that granular level.
We can do it at a state level today. We can do it at a county and
Right.
city level today in certain parts of the country. But if we wanted to get down to like a group of zip codes, we need more thermometers. But let's talk about that. How many more would we need?
Right.
We probably need another 5 million thermometers activated in the United States, 4.5 to 5 million. Now, how much is that going to cost? Because let's talk about this. Let's talk about this as a practical tool for intervention. The smart thermometers cost around $20. Compare that. Let's talk about affordability. Compare that to the average cost of a COVID-19 test. It's about $100 today, plus the doctor's office visit. That is one test on one day for one person with high false negatives. What's that mean? You get a negative test, but you really have COVID. And you go back out in the community and spread it. With 5 million more thermometers, and that's, remember, that's one thermometer per family for use up to 5 years, right? Now you're talking about spending about $100 million to be able to hotspot early, make real-time decisions. I can't imagine how hard it is for mayors and governors and politicians today. I can't imagine how hard it is. They're making decisions, but they don't have a ton of really good real-time data. Now you have real-time data to see, is transmission going down? Are the fever curves going down? Did my stay-at-home order or my school closing order actually curb the infectious disease? Did it break the chain of infection?
Yep. Yep.
Now you have those kinds of tools.
Yeah, and so for a large discount order too, it might be a little less than that.
Absolutely.
But I'm sure you'd be willing to make a deal on that if you're going to order 5 million. But here's the joke: we're spending trillions right now, so 100 million, 50 million, whatever it is a drop in the bucket. The concern will, of course, be privacy. Everybody's going to be like, whoa, now the government or Kinsa is tracking me. So you better address that. And then I want to go, we got to do another map because I love this. So go ahead.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up the privacy question.
Pull us down from the share. Let's just talk to you for a second, then we'll come back, because privacy is a huge. I would think that potentially maybe one of the stumbling blocks you're going to run into. So address that for us.
Yeah, we're really proud of building this the right way. So my big message to you is, it is possible. We have the technology. We can design systems to have perfect personal privacy protections and access to information that helps you, your community, your health system, and your government hotspot outbreaks early. You can have both. This is not a balancing act. It is not an equation. You can have both. And to be clear, what you see on healthweather.us is the percentage of people ill on a county by county basis or a geo by geo basis. It is not mathematically possible. It is not possible to identify an individual based on percentage of people ill. That's a population level statistic. It's not an individual piece of information. This is not de-identified data. This is not metadata about you. This is population level calculations.
Now you have the data though.
We do have the data.
When I sign up, it's under my name, Sean Burke, and I put in the thermometer in my mouth. You know, Sean Burke today had a temperature of whatever it is.
We do, and I'll tell you a short story about this. Until 2 years ago, we didn't have your data. Until 2 years ago, I didn't want to know who you were because I've been trying to.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But 2 years ago, our users revolted and they said, I got my new iPhone or I got my new Android phone and I'm downloading the app. Where's all my history? And I would tell them, sorry, I don't have your information. I don't know who you are. I can't give you any history. I have no idea.
Right.
You keep using that phone or you got to transfer it from your last phone. And they revolted. And then I had moms and dads revolting against me saying, but I want my husband to see the same data that I'm seeing on his phone. I have no way to do that. So we created a login in response to our users. And now we have personal information. Before we had some level of personal, we had geodata, but we didn't know who you really were, right? And so today we now have that data. So the way we handle that is that there's a user database for you to get the features you want so that you can have your history, you can have your husband or babysitter share the data, but then we pipe it into a database that is what powers healthweather.us. And that's a very different database. In order for someone to access the original user data, there's only 2 people in the company that can do it. And they both have to say, yes, we're going to access it. So again, we're taking this very seriously. If you don't mind, Sean, I'm going to tell you one more story if it's okay. We were recently approached by
and then I'm going to tell you my skepticism. So go ahead.
We were recently approached by a state university system who said, in order for us to open up the university, we need everyone's personal health information. We don't want to know sick or not. We want the data. We want the temperature data.
The aggregated data of the people.
They wanted the personal data.
Though they wanted to know who.
Yes. They wanted to tie it to the individual. And so we said, guys, first of all, we think that's illegal. Second of all, like that's creepy. And one of our big user experience premises from day one is don't be creepy. The moment you're creepy is the moment you lose people's trust. Don't be creepy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they said to us, but that's the only way we trust. Like college students, even if they're sick, they don't come into university health services. We need to reach out from them. And I said, oh, I get that that's a reasonable request, but why not tell the student that? Why not say, hey, give me your data and I'll reach out to you. Make it a service to them. And they said, no. We need everyone's data. And I said, well, I don't feel comfortable with that. But they said, that's okay. We're going to let them opt into your system. But if we don't see their data, we're going to go after them and say, why aren't you opting into the system? And I said, that's an end around. That's an end around. Like I can, as a company, I'm potentially protected. We spoke to the assistant attorney general of the state who said, we think that this is the only way to open up schools today. And we think it's going to pass the state constitution. And we said, sorry. I mean, for a tiny company like ours and a multi-million-dollar statewide university deal that was a tough one for us to turn down. And but we did it. We turned it down, and I'm proud of our sales team because the sales guys don't usually turn down stuff like that. They turned it down. They didn't even have to come to me. I didn't have to make the decision. My team turned it down. So it's very proud of that. Anyhow, tell me your skepticism.
That's a feel-good story. I love that you're giving us the feel-good one before I hit you. Here's the deal. You have the data. Just like, I got to use Google. Google collects all the data and they have, don't be evil or whatever their slogan is, but they utilize our personal data a lot. Once I give it to you, who knows what happens when you drop over and someone else takes over. So, and I know that there's benefit. I don't even have a problem giving you, if I knew for sure that data would be gone or not used, I think it's for the greater good. I think it's really great. But there's that point of, it's company today. It changes their rules tomorrow. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it's a great point. And that is a really, really important point. So I have really tried to build a business model that is about aggregated data. It's about where and when outbreaks are occurring. I want to sell that data to companies, medicines companies, vaccine companies. I want to sell the aggregate data. Where are outbreaks occurring? Because let's be honest, it's not just government who responds to outbreaks. It's private sector. It's hospital systems. It is we've been criticized in the past because disinfectant companies, the two largest in the country, we know who they are. They hate their names being said in the same
It
sentence.
was in the New York Times. Clorox. I know Clorox uses your data. Go ahead.
Listen, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control recommends disinfecting in the context of illness. Guess what? They don't pay to get the message out. They don't have the money to get the message out. The only two companies in the country that really have the money to get the message out, one of them is Clorox and the other one is Lysol, right? And they pay to get it out. And I have no problems with that. That to me is in the interest of public health, to get the message out that you should be disinfecting in the context of illness. So that's our business model. Our business model is the ultimate business model is to get government to use it, to get government to supply the funds to maintain the network so that they can use it. I'm not a company who has some other business model, right? We would never make money on selling a Bluetooth, a high cost thermometer for a similar price to a regular thermometer. We make less money on that product, right, than a normal thermometer company does. Why? Because our costs are higher. We could never sustain a company on that alone. But I believe that this is the right thing to do, is to expose information, aggregate information, not individual information. So I'll tell you, when I leave the company, and one day I'll have to, one day, for whatever reason, I'll retire, maybe I'm not around for other reasons, that's when things can shift. If we can build a business model that aligns our interest with user trust and outbreak exposure, and build a business model on those two things, there is no reason to ever shift the company away from that. And as long as I continue to publicly say we will not share individual data with anyone, we will share aggregate data always in response to outbreaks in public health. As long as I keep saying that, as long as my people keep saying that, and as long as we succeed at building a business model around that, the incentives are clearly aligned to avoid that kind of thing.
Fair enough. And of course, you have to have a way to make money, and there's no reason that you wouldn't. And it seems that having the government involved with this, as much as I hate I'm not a big government take over the world thing, but it seems like this could be valuable to start pinpointing a bit where we need to focus quickly to get things under control. It's a little bit like if you have someone who takes a test and you get them as someone who has it, and you can pull them out of the population. That really reduces, there's models that I've seen online, it really reduces the spread if you can pull these people out. So if we're able to isolate certain areas quickly, it seems like it would stop the spread.
That's our goal. I mean, that's the whole goal. Sean, I will tell you this. There is the ultimate beneficiaries of this product are the citizens. And by proxy, that's government who should be using the data, whether it's state, local, or federal. The government should be using it. They're the proxies for the citizens, right? They're the ones that are going to do response here. But I'm running up against a wall. And the wall is that people don't believe they should pay for data. I don't have any other way to sustain the network. I don't have any other way to sustain the network, and someone's got to maintain and sustain the network for this to continue to have the utility out of it. We are not a company that sells something else and has a data byproduct and we can just give it away. And by the way, those companies don't have good enough data. The data is not good enough for outbreak detection. We purpose built this system for outbreak detection. That's why we have high quality data. So I need to figure out how to overcome that resistance, or how to frame this in a way so that government actually wants to maintain the network. We're running into roadblocks. How's,
I don't know what's public or not, but are you guys profitable? Are you still bringing in funding to keep this thing going? Where are you sitting?
Yeah, I mean, we had a surge of revenue at the beginning of the COVID-19 scare. We started pricing thermometers at cost. It was the right thing to do. $20 was at cost. We now make a tiny bit off of margin off of that, partly because supply chain costs have relaxed a little bit. But that's where we are. I mean, we are not profitable. We are a small company. We're trying to grow. We're trying to do the right thing. And my vision since day one is a global system to detect outbreaks, because I think everyone realizes now we need it. If we don't have it, situations like this occur. And let's be clear, 2017, 2018 was also a bad year. That was a bad flu year. There's a Times article, New York Times article, that basically says we called it 2.5 months before CDC. Why? Well, because we had real-time data. We could see that it was severe. In 2017, 2018, nearly 80,000 Americans died from the flu. There were tents outside of emergency rooms in the Southeast. In Atlanta, Imagine if they had 12 weeks advance notice. What could we have done with 12 weeks advance notice? That's the power of the system. And to me, this is basic 21st century infrastructure for early warning.
It seems like it. Do you have competition? Is there somebody else out there trying to do what you're doing? And I bet there are. But I mean, at the level you're doing it.
As far as we can tell, no. I mean, to be clear, there are definitely other smart thermometer companies out there. I don't think their intention is to use the data for outbreak detection. It's to create a cool thermometer product. And there are definitely other groups out there trying to use data for early warning. I look at those guys as complements. I look at those guys as collaborators, not as competitors. CDC
Sure.
is absolutely a collaborator. They do great work. We want to support them as much as we possibly can. Could you use Twitter feeds? Yeah. I mean, there's other things that you could try to use. In our experience, they just haven't had the power of the predictive power that we have. But taking a bunch of data sets together and combining them, it's wonderful. We want to do that. So we don't have a real competitor out there. We have potential collaborators. We have potential partners.
I get it. And yeah, it seems valuable. So before we end, we're getting towards the end. I want to show them a little bit more on the map. Give us a little what you think is cool, what people can see. One of the things I've seen, it was in a video you had that shows the spike and then later the spike in temperatures and then later the spike in cases, and you match them up, and it's amazing how accurate this is.
Yeah, let's show you that right now. So
all right, here we go. Yeah.
In blue, what you see is our unusual fever signal. Remember that flashlight going off on the map saying, hey, something's going wrong. And in red,
but just for listeners, that blue is the actual temperatures that you are bringing into your database, you're seeing. So that's the information you're receiving from the field through your temperature, your thermometers.
Correct. And this is specific. What you see on the chart here is specific to New York City. So that blue curve is what we get. The red curve is the New York City death curve. If you displace or push back our data by 18 days, the overlap in those two curves is almost identical.
Yeah, you can see it there. So now that's death versus cases.
Correct.
Interesting. Are you finding more correlation with deaths, or is it the same for cases?
Between 2 and 4 weeks, we have a lead time of between 2 and 4 weeks on cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. Now, part of the reason is that not everyone who gets sick from COVID dies, right? So we actually have a little bit more of a lead time on hospitalizations than on deaths. And the cases are similar. And when you analyze this, we've done this for every single state in the country, and for most cities, it's the same curve. We can predict the beginning and the peak and where it's going to level off. We don't always get the back side right. And part of the difficulty in getting the back side right with fever data has to do with these different policies on social distancing. So that's why we created that unusual transmission data. The transmission data has other signals that come out of it that are really powerful, both in terms of how fast it's being curved off, et cetera. So there's different signals for slightly different purposes, but the science is pretty strong across the board.
Interesting. Well, I know we're starting to have less deaths because we figured out a bit more what to do. In fact, I did a show for anybody listening just last week with Dr. Paul Merrick, who has brought out a protocol called Math Plus. It's on YouTube. And they are laying out, this is the protocol on how we're treating it in the hospital, and they're reducing deaths by 60 to 75%. So hopefully those little bumps don't get so big following your deal. Okay, so show us now what I want to do, again, for the listeners, pretend you're us. I mean, how could a listener go to your site and now, first of all, this data is free for everybody, for us. I mean, I appreciate you guys making this available for us to see. But someone goes to the site on a day, and what should they look at to understand what's even going on? Just give us that.
Sure. Let me pop it back up. So this is not, we're going to improve this map to make it easier to understand the relationship between early detection, cases, and hospitalization. So there will be some updates in the next month here, but for now,
okay,
look at each one of the signals. There's 4 key signals.
Okay.
One is fever. This is observed fever across the country, just fever. The other is unusual fever. This is fever above and beyond what we would ordinarily expect from cold and flu season. This is a little bit difficult to look at right now because of the summer months, as we talked about.
Put your cursor over that little guide right there, so people can, right there. See, guys, the coloring. See right below. Yeah, there you go. The key. So you understand what he's talking about over on the map. Go ahead.
And then, right now, one of the key things to look at, because we are in the summer months, is transmission. And transmission is really powerful. This is unusual transmission, and this is the trend that we're seeing over time. But this is where I would start. This is what actually, if you go to our map that's on the homepage, the first thing.
This is the homepage. Okay.
This is the homepage for healthweather.us. The first thing you'll see is the latest analysis, like our analysis of where things are going to get worse or better. The second thing you see is real-time transmission data. And that's probably the easiest way to look at this. If you want to explore and you want to go in deeper into like looking at individual signals, you can do that as I just showed you. But this is really, again, 3 weeks out, what's going to happen. 3 weeks out in Texas, we expect cases to start curbing off. But in parts of
Minnesota.
Northeast, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, up different places, you're having things ramp up. Give us show us the trend one for me, will you?
Sure.
I like looking at the trend.
Let me go back to the deep dive here.
So if you hit trend, this tells us what?
This tells us the recent changes. What's happening recently? Like
recently being in the last day or two or week?
Yeah, the last 7 days. So how the illness levels changed in the past 7 days. You can see it right here.
All right. So it's starting to cool off in those areas. It's starting to warm up in those areas. Now, we saw that other one that was pretty red hot in some places and or blue in some other places. So it's been blue for a while. I mean, it's been cooling off for a while. So it's just showing a little bit more. We got a little bit more cooling off.
That's right. So if I go back,
is that right?
That's right. That's exactly. If I show this map, you can see that Texas was blue both last week and this week. Right.
I got it. So it's just a little bit more cooling off. Fascinating, man. I just, crazy for you to be able to sit and look. It must be interesting. All right. You can take that down for me, bring you back to the full screen. So it must be fascinating for you. You thought of this idea, you brought it forth, and you're watching this actually work. I mean, what is that? How does that feel for you?
There were probably about a month and a half where I felt, a little validated. Listen, here's the way I would describe it. I'm sad that it took a pandemic to bring to light how important this work is. Yeah. I'm thrilled that we survived as a company over 8 years, begging, borrowing, steering, trying to figure out the business model to get to the point where we could help. Listen, entrepreneurs go through near-death experiences with their company. And this is not a company to me. This is my life's work. This is an opportunity to have a huge impact on the world. And we've been through 5 near-death experiences. That's a lot for any company, as any entrepreneur will tell you. You hit 3 and you're usually out of business, right? We've hit 5. And so I'm grateful that we're around. But it makes me even more anxious because we have partnerships with 5 states and a couple cities. Some of those states are putting more thermometers out in the field to start doing outbreak detection down to precise levels.
Philadelphia. I saw that Philadelphia is one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Philadelphia, right. Idaho, Oregon, Colorado, Connecticut, New Orleans. We have a philanthropist who's supporting New Orleans. We have a philanthropist who's supporting California.
Nice.
So they're paying to get more thermometers out there in the field to do better hot spotting. But this can't be a research project. You can't just look at it for interest. It has to be used. It has to be incorporated into decision making. And I'm seeing a slowdown in how many people are incorporating it into decision making. I don't understand why. Every 2 weeks, I go around to some of the leading public health and scientists, and I say, you've done more analysis of the data. Is it real? Is it real? My team, those people all say, yes, it's real. This is, as far as we can tell, I keep hearing this, as far as we can tell, the only effective, scientifically validated leading indicator of COVID-19 spread. I keep hearing that. And I keep banging my head against a wall saying, why is it not being used? What do we need to do on our end? We need to make this more usable. No doubt, that's on us. We need to make it more and more and more usable. But the real decision makers know how to use data. They know how to incorporate data. Why is it not being used? And, if I'm being really honest, the last 2 days, I was a little down in the dumps because I saw a slowdown in that. And I don't get it. Like, tell me.
Do you have an answer?
I don't have a good answer. I don't have a good answer. I think I can.
Do they tell you anything? Do they tell you money? It's what do they tell you?
So here's what I've gathered, and no one's really necessarily given me a direct answer on this, but I'm reading between the lines. One is data should be free. Two is you're a private company. We in public health, you're evil.
Yeah.
And listen, I used to work, I spent many, many, many years on that side of the fence, and I get it. I get it, right? There's always a question of conflict of interest. Well, look, talk to the scientists, talk to the public health people, talk to the external validators, not to me, the experts. So I've had like 4 or 5 very, very prominent people who join me on every single call. They don't have a financial interest in the call. They join me to say, this works, guys, use it. And I'm grateful for their support. I think if I'm being really honest, I'm an ex-public health person too. I spent years working in infectious disease overseas. I co-ran one of the large pediatric HIV programs in the world. So I have a rich history in infectious disease. And I will tell you, from my experience, my public health colleagues who are doing amazing work right now, they're working their tails off, they're doing amazing work. The one challenge is that they don't have the term early warning in their vocabulary. Not even in their vocabulary. They think about drugs, diagnostics, vaccines. Contact tracing is something they think about. The new methods of doing contact tracing, they're still a little leery of, but they don't have this idea of early warning in their vocabulary. And it's just a foreign kind of concept for them. In my mind, in any epidemic, there's a 4-part sequential response. The first is early warning. The second is widespread testing. The third is treatment and isolation and contact tracing. Let's help people get better. And the fourth is conferring immunity. But those latter 3 steps, widespread testing, treatment and isolation, and conferring immunity, they are informed and helped by an early warning system. We need an early warning system. We finally have one that works. Let's use it, please.
Interesting, because there is public entities, governments giving money to private companies all the time. Let's just talk about Boeing, Raytheon. Government is paying huge amounts of money to private companies. So that in the end should not be a problem. And of course, the US has lots of early warning system radar systems all over the place to detect bombers and all sorts of things. So it's a fascinating thing you're running into. It's funny, the interview with Dr. Paul Merrick last week, one of the top doctors for critical care on earth has a protocol that he and other very, very smart doctors are using in a number of hospitals. And it's not being accepted and widely used because they haven't stopped to do a trial in the middle of this hell where they're not interested in doing that because they know it helps. So they feel as doctors, they can't withhold this treatment from someone as a placebo. So it's interesting to me that we run into these barriers, these what seemed to me a little bit silly barriers, especially we're in the middle of quote unquote a war here. We're in the middle of something that hasn't happened for 100 years. We need to kind of get out of the box and let's just solve this. So I think an early warning system seems sensible. Again, I just got to remind you, even though I'm glowing over this, he has not paid me to say anything. I just find this really, really cool. Studied, in fact, a couple of friends of mine, we've been on the Zoom together. Check this out. Look how this thing works. So we really love your work. I wish I had an answer for you. I am an entrepreneur, so I understand the hell that you've probably been going forward. That's why I wanted to see if we're even profitable yet. It sounds like this is a bonanza, but it seems like it could be. You just keep pushing and figuring out your data to make it more presentable. And this public facing thing that you have with healthweather.us, the more intuitive and easy for people to understand, I think you're going to see even people within companies go, wait a second, why don't we use this for X, Y, and Z?
I hope so. We need to do it. We need to do a good job on our end too, but we also need to figure out how to overcome the resistance. You mentioned government. I'm gonna make this point. There are entities in the government. For example, there's somebody called BARDA. I think people know what some people know what it is. They were given a lot of money. Like we're running into these roadblocks where
What's BARDA? Well, now that you brought it up, what is it?
Well, BARDA is better known as the stockpiling agency for the United States. They stockpile vaccines for this. They're like
vaccines or ventilators, things like just like stuff.
That's right. Yeah. So they're kind of like the biologic side of how do you respond to health issues, right? They're better known as that. They do a lot of other things. We were talking to them, we were talking to others, and we were saying, hey, what research can we do together? How can we scale this up? And their response was, it's not in our mandate. It is not in our mandate. We don't have the ability to spend money on population level early warning or hotspotting. If it was an individual diagnostic, we could spend money on it. But we were told that it's explicitly not in their mandate. That's what we were told. Now, that's sad, right? Because I think we do need to be thinking about early warning. I want to talk to the government agency who does have it in their mandate. I don't know who that is. I really want to chat with them, because let them scrutinize the data. Like let's go through the science. Let's prove it.
Yeah.
We can do that fast. But if it's working, let's use the data. It's not just let's use it. This is an opportunity to save lives and livelihoods. If we can use data that is an early warning indicator to contain outbreaks early, to send the test kits in, to send the virologists in, to send the PPE in, to make those policy interventions, the stay-at-home orders, but in an isolated way, right? So that the economy can remain open in the unaffected areas.
Yeah, you don't have to have the whole country locked down. You may have to have a county for a little bit pulled back or something. Well, I feel your pain. It is interesting, again, in this battle that we're in, that you have to be up against that. I hope you persist. Maybe if you're game, we'll check back in with you and see how this is going. Any last words?
First, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it, Sean. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, well, keep going. I'm going to keep checking in every day or so on this. I look forward to the changes you have in your map.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. Stay well.
Thank you. You too.
That was Inder Singh. He's the CEO of Kinsa. I really like that organization. You got to look at that map, healthweather.us. And having had my own businesses, started my own businesses, having my own business now, it's interesting that this guy has such valuable information. In some way, it could help us, and he's having a hard time figuring out how to monetize it. I don't know what that does. Did that freak you out? Doesn't freak me out. That whole concept of you take my temperature, it goes to them. As long as I believe the company isn't going to use it for something else, email me at heysean@seanburke.net. Let me know what you think of that. Let me know what your thoughts are on the whole deal. Fascinating that we have last week Dr. Merrick not being able to get his protocol in use, even though it's helping. And now we have information that could be useful. So we don't have to lock the whole darn country down. We can really pinpoint where the heck an outbreak is and hold that area down a bit while something else moves along. Or maybe you're of the mind, heck, this thing's going to go away someday, and it will. I believe we're going to get out of this at some point. But I'm for doing whatever we can to start this sucker up right now. I do not see how the economy lasts if we just keep doing this. As much as the government wants to pump out money, we need to keep businesses open. I don't want to lose all our businesses. 50% of our small businesses go away, and now all I can do is deal with big businesses. Small businesses is like what is it? It's the flavor. I mean, it's like, yeah, you can eat a burger, but a really good burger, that's like a small business. It's the flavor in the community of the whole deal. So there you go. Today's show was produced by Tracy Andrews-Scavage. I appreciate her very much. She helps us have a great program. You can watch the other shows that I've done at seanburke.net. You can find this on YouTube, and please be safe out there. Bye-bye.